I am praying, Father, not only for these disciples, but also for all who will ever believe in me through their message. I pray that they will all be one, just as you and I are one, as you are in me, Father, and I am in you. And may they be in us, so that the world will believe you sent me. I have given them the glory you gave me, so that they may be one as we are one. I in them, and you in me. May they experience such perfect unity that the world will know that you sent me, and that you love them as much as you love me. Father, I want these whom you have given me to be with me where I am. Then they can see all the glory you gave me, because you loved me even before the world began. O righteous Father, the world doesn't know you, but I do, and these disciples know you sent me. I have revealed you to them, and I will continue to do so. Then your love for me will be in them, and I will be in them. When Jesus had finished praying, he crossed the Kidron Valley with his disciples, heading towards a large grove of olive trees. On the way, Jesus told them, "All of you will desert me, for the scriptures say, I will strike the shepherd and the sheep will be scattered. But after I'm raised from the dead, I will go ahead of you to Galilee and meet you there." Peter said to him, "Even if everyone else deserts you, I never will." Jesus replied, "I tell you the truth, Peter, that very night before the rooster crows, twice you will deny me 3 times that you even knew me." "No," Peter declared emphatically, "even if I have to die with you, I will never deny you." And all the others said the same. As they entered the olive grove, there was an area called Gethsemane. And Jesus said, "Sit here while I go and pray." He took Peter, James and John with him, and he became deeply troubled and distressed. He told them, "My soul is crushed with grief to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me." He went on a little further, and he fell to the ground, and he prayed that if it were possible, that this awful hour awaiting him might pass by him. "Abba, Father," he cried out, "everything is possible for you. Please take this cup of suffering away from me. Yet not my will, but yours be done." When he returned and found the disciples asleep, he said to Peter, "Simon, are you asleep? Couldn't you watch with me even for 1 hour? Keep watch and pray so that you will not give in to temptation. For the spirit is willing, but the body is weak." Jesus left them again and went and prayed the same prayer as before. "Father, take this cup of suffering away from me, yet I want your will to be done, not mine." When he turned to them again the 3rd time, he found them sleeping, for they couldn't keep their eyes open, and they didn't know what to say. Then he said, "Go ahead, sleep, have your rest. But no, the time has come. The Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. On your feet, let's be going. Look, my betrayer is here." Judas, the betrayer, knew this place because Jesus had often gone there with his disciples. And even as Jesus spoke, Judas arrived with the crowd of men armed with swords and clubs. They'd been sent by the leading priests and elders of the people. This traitor had given them a pre-arranged signal. "You will know which one to arrest when I greet him with a kiss," he said. Judas walked straight up to Jesus. "Greetings, Rabbi," he exclaimed, and he gave him a kiss. Jesus said, "Go ahead, my friend. Do what you came for." Then the others grabbed Jesus and arrested him. However, at this point, Simon Peter drew a sword and slashed off the right ear of Malchus, the high priest's servant. "Put away your sword," Jesus told him. "Those who use the sword will die by the sword. Don't you realize I could ask my Father for thousands of angels to protect us, and he would send them instantly? But if I did, how would the scriptures be fulfilled that describe what must happen now?" Then Jesus said to the crowd, "Am I some dangerous revolutionary that you come with swords and clubs to arrest me? Why didn't you arrest me in the temple? I was there teaching every day." But this all happened to fulfill the words of the prophets as recorded in the scriptures. At that point, all the disciples deserted him and fled. So after the soldiers and the temple guards had arrested Jesus and tied him up, they took him first of all to Annas, since he was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, the high priest at that time. Interestingly, it was Caiaphas who told the other Jewish leaders it's better that one man should die for the people. Simon Peter followed Jesus, as did the other disciples. The other disciple was acquainted with the high priest, so he was allowed to enter the high priest's courtyard with Jesus. Peter had to stay outside the gate. Then the disciple who knew the high priest spoke to the woman watching at the gate, and she let Peter in. The woman asked Peter, "You're not one of this man's disciples, are you?" "No," he said, "I'm not." Because it was cold, the household servants and the guards had made a fire. They stood around it, warming themselves, and Peter stood with them, warming himself. Inside, the high priest began asking Jesus about his followers, what he'd been teaching them. Jesus replied, "Everyone knows what I teach. I've preached regularly in the synagogues and the temple where the people gather. I've not spoken in secret. Why are you asking me this question? Ask those who heard me. They know what I said." At this point, one of the temple guards standing nearby slapped Jesus across the face. "Is that the way to answer the high priest?" he demanded. Jesus replied, "If I said anything wrong, you must prove it. But if I am speaking the truth, why are you beating me?" Then Annas bound Jesus and sent him to Caiaphas, the high priest. Meanwhile, Simon Peter continued to stand by the fire, warming himself. They asked him again, "You're not one of his disciples, are you?" He denied it, saying, No, I'm not." One of the household servants of the high priest, a relative of the man whose ear Peter had cut off, asked, "Didn't I see you out there in the olive grove with Jesus?" Another said, "Surely you're one of them. Your accent gives you away." Again, Peter denied it. He began to call down curses on himself. He swore to them, "I don't know the man." Immediately a cock crowed, and then Peter remembered the words that Jesus had spoken. "Before the cock crows, you will disown me 3 times." He went outside and he wept bitterly. Jesus' trial before Caiaphas ended in the early hours of the morning. Then he was taken to the headquarters of Pilate, the Roman governor. His accusers didn't go inside because they would defile themselves. They wouldn't be allowed to celebrate the Passover. So Pilate went out to them and asked, "What is your charge against this man?" "We wouldn't have handed him over to you if he weren't a criminal," they retorted. "Take him away then and judge him by your own law," Pilate told them. "Only the Romans are permitted to execute someone," the Jewish leaders replied. This fulfilled Jesus' prediction about the way that he would die. Then Pilate went back into his headquarters, called for Jesus to be brought to him. "Are you the king of the Jews?" he asked him. Jesus replied, "Is this your own question, or did others tell you about me?" "Am I a Jew?" Pilate retorted. "Your own people and their leading priests brought you to me for trial. Why? What have you done?" Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not an earthly kingdom. If it were, my followers would fight to keep me from being handed over to the Jewish leaders. But my kingdom is not of this world." Pilate said, "So you are a king?" Jesus responded, "You say I am a king. Actually, I was born and came into the world to testify to the truth. All who love the truth recognize that what I say is true." "What is truth?" Pilate asked. Again, Pilate went out to the people and told them, "He's not guilty of any crime. But you have a custom of asking me to release one prisoner each year at Passover. Would you like me to release this King of the Jews?" They shouted back, "No, not this man. We want Barabbas." Barabbas was a revolutionary. Then Pilate had Jesus flogged with a whip. It was tipped with lead and pieces of bone. The soldiers wove a crown of thorns and put it on his head, and they put a purple robe on him. "Hail, King of the Jews," they mocked as they slapped him across the face. Pilate went outside again and said to the people, "I'm going to bring him out to you now, but understand clearly I find him not guilty." Jesus came out wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe. Pilate said, "Look, here is the man." When they saw him, the leading priests and temple guards began shouting, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" "Take him yourselves and crucify him," Pilate said. "I find him not guilty." The Jewish leaders replied, "By our law he ought to die, because he called himself the Son of God." When Pilate heard this, he was more frightened than ever. He took Jesus back into the headquarters again and asked him, "Where are you from?" Jesus gave no answer. "Why don't you talk to me?" Pilate demanded. "Don't you realize that I have the power to release you or crucify you?" Jesus said, "You would have no power over me at all, unless it were given to you from above. So the one who handed me over to you has the greater sin." Pilate tried to release him, but the Jewish leaders shouted, "If you release this man, you're no friend of Caesar. Anyone who declares himself a king is a rebel against Caesar." When they said this, Pilate brought Jesus out to them again, sat down on the judgment seat on the platform that's called the Stone Pavement. It was now about noon on the day of preparation before the Passover. Pilate said to the people, "Look, here is your king." "Away with him," they yelled. "Away with him. Crucify him." "What, crucify your king?" Pilate asked. "We have no king but Caesar," the leading priest shouted back. Pilate turned Jesus over to them to be crucified. They took Jesus away, carrying the cross by himself, and he went to a place called the Place of the Skull, which in Hebrew is called Golgotha. There they nailed him to the cross. 2 others were crucified with him, one on either side, with Jesus in between. Pilate posted a sign on the cross that read, "Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews." The place where Jesus was crucified was near the city, and the sign was written in Hebrew, Latin and Greek, so that many people could read it. The leading priests objected to what had been written and said to Pilate, "Change it from the King of the Jews to, 'He said, I am the King of the Jews.'" Pilate replied, "No, what I have written, I have written." When the soldiers had crucified Jesus, they divided his clothes among the 4 of them. They also took his undergarment, but it was seamless, woven in one piece from top to bottom. So they said, "Rather than tearing it apart, let's throw dice for it." This fulfilled the scripture that says, "They divided my garments among them and threw dice for my clothing." So that's what they did. Standing near the cross were Jesus' mother and his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Cleopas, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus saw his mother standing there, beside the disciple that he loved, he said to her, "Dear woman, here is your son." And he said to the disciple, "Here is your mother." From then on, this disciple took her into his home. Jesus knew that his mission was now finished, and to fulfill all scripture, he said, "I am thirsty." A jar of sour wine was sitting there, so they soaked a sponge in it and put it on a hyssop branch and held it to his lips. When Jesus tasted it, he said, "It is finished." He bowed his head and gave up his spirit. It was the day of preparation. The Jewish leaders didn't want the bodies hanging there the next day because it was the Sabbath. In fact, a very special Sabbath because it was Passover week. So they asked Pilate to speed up their deaths by ordering that their legs be broken and then the bodies could be taken down. So the soldiers came and broke the legs of the two men crucified with Jesus. But when they came to Jesus, they saw that he was already dead, so they didn't break his legs. One of the soldiers, however, pierced his side with a spear, and immediately blood and water flowed out. This report is from an eyewitness giving an accurate account. He speaks the truth so that you may also continue to believe. These things that happened are also a fulfillment of the scriptures that say, "Not one of his bones will be broken, and they will look on the one you have pierced." Afterwards, Joseph of Arimathea, who had been a secret disciple of Jesus because he feared the Jewish leaders, asked Pilate for permission to take down Jesus' body. When Pilate gave the permission, Joseph came and took the body away. Also with him was Nicodemus, the man who'd come to Jesus at night and had a discussion about being born again. He brought about 35 kilograms of perfume ointment made from myrrh and aloes. Following the Jewish burial custom, they wrapped Jesus' body with the spices in long sheets of linen cloth. The place of Jesus' crucifixion was near a garden, and in there was a new tomb which had never been used before. And so, because it was the day of preparation for the Jewish Passover, and since the tomb was close at hand, they laid Jesus' body there.